Hi guys, and welcome back to Just Design. Today I'm going to give you a basic overview of how to use Adobe Photoshop to create images and drawings like you've never done before. If you are a complete beginner at Adobe Photoshop, there are a few things that you have to learn. We're going to go over that in this video, and let's open our Adobe Photoshop and let's begin. So Adobe Photoshop is a paid for subscription. There is no way for you to have Adobe Photoshop without paying for the Adobe suite. You can pay for Adobe Photoshop by itself, but it's better to get the full suite so that you can use all of the apps inside of it. Adobe is very useful for graphic designers, artists, and many small businesses. So if you can use Adobe to your favor, I would suggest that you do it. So this is the layout of Adobe when you first click into the app. It's going to show you all of your recent artistries down here. And then it's also going to show you on your files on your side here, your recently deleted, your Lightroom photos, and what was been shared with you. I don't really ever deal with this, so I'm not even going to bother with this. I usually just use the new file and the open tab. Today we're going to do a new file, and we're going to bring up our documents page. This is the documents page for a new document. I like to start with a blank page, so I'm just going to go with a custom 9x9 because that's usually what I work in. Once you're in the Adobe suite, there are a few tabs that you should familiarize yourself with. So up here we have our File tab. That's going to be all of your file gobbledygook right here. So we have our New File tab. That's if you want to put in a new document. Our Open to open up any of our existing documents. Browse and Bridge is for people who have Bridge in their Adobe suite. It will help you find certain items that would be useful to you. All of your documents that you have saved in Bridge can be browsed here in the Bridge. You can open Smart Objects, Open As, and Open Recent. Open Recent will bring up all of your recent documents that you have saved in the cloud. I never really bother with any of this stuff. It's usually New, Open, or if we come down here, Export, Save as Web Legacy, or Import, Place Embedded. So Place Embedded will bring up your files in your computer. I'm going to blur my files and this is what I have, one of my drawings I did a while back that I'm really proud of. All right, we're going to be working with this today. And this is just to show you, that's Place Embedded. Place Embedded will put anything onto your canvas straight from your computer documents. So that is how you would place an image. So I've already got this image. So say we want to move this image, right? Because if you don't know what you're doing, you're probably just going to be like, how can I move this, right? How can I size it? How can I make it to where it's going to fit? So I would do V on your keyboard is the shortcut to be able to get your move button. Control T is how you would be able to size this, okay? So using your shift button, you would be able to manually move this in any way. If you don't hit shift, then it's just going to do it like the way that it was already brought up. So if I just wanted this a little bit smaller, Control T and just clicking and dragging. That's going to be able to move our image here. The hand tool comes in handy because you can move your canvas with your hand tool. To be able to bring up your hand tool, it's H on your keyboard. Okay? And then next we have our brush tool. This is how we're going to be able to draw in our Adobe Photoshop. I have custom brushes in my setup, so I'm already accustomed to this, but you may not be. So you're going to be getting default brushes that Photoshop will give you. And here's just an example of some of those brushes. So we have hard round, soft pressure, soft round, soft size, dry media, wet media, and special effects. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you guys. You don't need special brushes to make a really great artist piece, okay? But it does help. Having nice brushes will help create different lighting effects like you see in this image. It will help you to create more dynamic shading, such as here. You can see how I've shaded this image differently in certain areas. See how I have different textures in this drawing. Those were done with special effects brushes, which you can download, which I will show you in a later date on, on how to download brushes. Next, we have our Edit tab. Our Edit tab is great if we like to do photo manipulation. We'll get into that in a different series. But today, we're just going to focus on... Sorry, I have a cold. Excuse me. Today, we're just going to focus on drawing. But if you were wanting to get into photo manipulation, you can stick around for our next lesson, and I will go over photo manipulation and how we can do that, how we would use these different tools in our toolbox to be able to create those. But today I'm just going to go over the basics. So we have transform. Transform is going to be able to use our scale, rotate, screw, and distort. So scaling an image is just as it seems, scaling an image, making it bigger or smaller. That is literally the same thing as Control T, but it's also, if you want to use it, it is in your Transform Edit tab, okay? Rotating an image is just as it sounds. You can make it go 360, you can make it go at a 90-degree angle, or any angle you want, okay? That's rotating an image, okay? It's very simple. Now, something I like to use quite frequently, if I make a mistake on an image, okay, I love to use my keyboard. It's going to create so many simpler things for you in Photoshop, okay? So learning the keyboard shortcuts is going to be your lifesaver. Control Z is your undo button. So say if I come over here to my brush tool, okay, I'm going to come in to my layers here. Creating a new layer. I'll get into that in a minute. But say I come into here and I completely mess up this drawing, all right? I mean, completely mess it up. Oh no. Oh no, how am I going to fix that without erasing all of that? Control Z, Control Z. I've gotten rid of all of that. Now, if we come into Window, we're going to pull up our Layers tab. That's F7, okay? But this is going to be your lifesaver. Having a layers tab open at all times, being able to see your layers is very helpful, okay? I can hit Control Z all day, and it will get rid of these one by one. But it times out after a certain extent, and even then, I still was able to get rid of all those markings. But I want to see how many times we can get it. I'm just doing random markings just to see how long it takes for Control Z to time out, which it will. So if I Control Z, it's getting rid of most of these. Oh, it timed out. Now what do I do? It's timed out. I can't go back any further, and I want to get rid of this one right here. Well, we're going to come into a thing called a clipping mask. a clipping mask is going to be your best friend. It will help you to be able to fill certain areas and get rid of certain areas. So it'll help you erase things without having to use the erase tool. I can come in and I can erase this stuff. Now my image is fixed. But it would be fixed the other way as well if I hit E, which is my eraser tool, and I click hard round just for the sake of it, and I upsize my brush, and I just erase this. In my clipping mask. Hold on. You have to be in your actual, and I'll get over that in a second here. But I can use the erase tool as well. All right, so, but sometimes it's just easier to use a clipping mask, and sometimes it's easier to use your eraser. That's just something you'll get used to in time. I'm going to get rid of my little horsey here, and I'm just going to draw a circle. Just for a simple art lesson here, we're going to draw a circle. Say I want color in this circle right here, but I don't want color out here. All right, I don't want color outside of my circle, okay? I want color in the circle, I don't want color outside of the circle. This is how we're going to use our clipping mask, okay? So I'm just going to, even outside of the lines, fine. I'm going to use a different color, though, so I can see what I'm doing. All right, so I have color outside of my lines. Oh, no, I messed up. How can I get rid of that? That's fine. Don't panic. That is what your clipping mask is for, guys. Don't be afraid to use your tools. So X, if your clipping mask, which you'll see here, is white, in my little square here, it's white. I use this down here, that's my clipping mask, in your layers tab, all right? Black is going to get rid of white. Black is going to be your eraser in this case, all right? So it's going to erase, and white is going to be my bring back tool, okay? So we got an eraser and we got a undo button, basically, at the tip of your fingers, right? So we're going to erase, and I'm doing this really sloppy, but just so you guys get the idea. I'm going to erase outside of my circle here. And now what you'll see is if I go back on my layer and say I want to make it teal, just because that is already ugly, okay? I can come in here and I can color in my circle, and wada bing, wada boom, it's colored in, and nothing else is going to be, that's just because I didn't get the full thing, but I'll show you that in a second. How everything outside of this circle is not touched, okay? And then we're going to do the same thing there, and then we hit Control I. That's going to invert my clipping mask. So now it's black to white. So now everything on the outside is teal, and my circle is white. Now we could Control Z that and make it back to the original state that it was in. But beforehand, if I Control I, it inverts. So now, if I want to come out here and color, I can't. Okay, so now if I come over here, I can see all my teal, all right, that was there beforehand, okay? So clipping masks are very useful because it will help you color big spaces without interrupting the rest of your drawing. And I use that a lot in my drawings, just because it's a very useful thing Not so much in this photo. I didn't really use my clipping masks all that much, but I did on the horse especially because this is a huge space with very intricate detail. And I clipped out these very fine lines here, and if you look closely, you can almost tell where before I was used to Photoshop, you could tell I have very faint lines. Cancel here. And I'll use my brush to kind of circle some of my mistakes. So here, you'll see right there, that's a mistake because the clipping mask wasn't completely, right here, it wasn't completely clipped away. Right here, that's a mistake. So there are things that you have to get used to, and it takes a long time. So don't feel bad if you don't do a perfect clipping mask on your first try. Like, it takes a long time to get used to, and you'll get used to it. All right? So my next lesson is going to be drawing. It's very simple. All right? We go into our brush tool. We have our layers tab pulled up. We go to window. Hold on. We go to window, down here to layers, and I'll go over the different window tools here as well. But right now, we're just going to focus on our brush. So you'll notice brush lines can be very thin. Brush lines can be very thick. Now, how do I get something in between there? How do I upsize up and upsize down? I use my keyboard, especially to upsize my brush and decrease my brush size. Because if you come into here, to your brush tool up on the top here, you can manually do it with your mouse, right? It was very, very time consuming and not very practical. So on your keyboard, you're going to have these guys, these brackets. You also have your fancy brackets, right? I can't draw them for some reason, but this key on your keyboard, okay? Those two right there, your brackets, this is your downsize. So your left one is your downsize, your right one is your upsize. All right? So those two brackets are going to become very useful to you, especially in your art journey, because coming up here and manually doing it is not going to be helpful to you. And so now you got the basics down. You opened up a document. Now you can play around with it a little bit. Okay, now you know how to open up a document. You know how to import an image. You know how to do a layer. You know how to do a clipping mask. And now you know how to increase and decrease your brush size. So just these small things, you can start drawing a full image now. We can do a little guide. All right? Oh dear. I clicked. You have to make sure you're on your layer though, okay? There's my little guy. We can give him a little crown. All right, so here's our simplistic drawing, okay? So now I want to name my layer. I want to name my guy. We're going to name him Steve. All right, so we know what layer we're on. All right, you can see that this is already named because this was already named in my files. But if you double click on your layer and you type here, now we know what layer Steve's on because we got layer 1 and we have Steve. And these two could get very confusing because what if I want to draw a mustache on Steve? And then I find out later that I don't like that. Now I have all these layers, all right? Now I know it's on layer 1. Let's say I'm going later on, you're going to be like, oh, there's so much stuff on all these layers, right? All these layers have different squiggle lines on them. Well, that's because you didn't name them. And it would get very confusing very fast if you don't name your layers and not knowing what to do in certain areas. So we found Steve, and now we can name this mustache. All right. So Steve has a mustache and Steve has a crown. All right. Let's say we don't want Steve to have a crown. How would we get rid of that? This is a testing. Would we do our eraser or would we do our clipping mask? Both. We could do either or. You could do a clipping mask for this, or you could do your eraser for that. Okay. But for simplicity reasons, we're just going to use our eraser. All right. Now he doesn't have a crown in. He's not King Steve anymore. He's just Steve. All right. Now, let's say we want to fill Steve up. All right, we want to create a layer. We're going to go underneath the layer of Steve. All right, that's going to put something behind Steve. So say we want to make Steve, I don't know, yellow. All right, so I picked color yellow. And now we're going to come behind him. We're going to color that space in. All right, Steve is now yellow. But oh no, we're outside of the lines. What would we do? Would we do our eraser or would we do our clipping mask? Clipping mask, okay? Because this is going to be easier to focus on our silhouette versus having to go through our eraser and do all of that, okay? Because here's the difference between the eraser and a clipping mask, okay? I'll just show you real quick. Ignore the first part, all right? We got rid of that. That's an eraser. And then we're also going to do a clipping mask on the other side. All right? All right. So now I'm going to go back to my original color. And you'll see what I mean by the eraser versus a clipping mask. So if I erase here, you'll see, yeah, it's coming up here, but that's just because I'm using a bigger brush. Let me decrease my brush size. If I stay within the limits of the clipping mask, it's not you can't see anything there. See, you can see where the clipping mask is at here because it's almost like a boundary. But if I come over here, oh no, my eraser erased just that one thing. It did not erase the rest of this image right here, okay? But say we just want Steve to be on a blank background. We want him to be yellow, but we don't want to have to deal with coloring this whole image a clipping mask, okay? That's when you would invert. So we would Control I. That would get rid of everything. But if I've got my color on white, I can come in here and color Steve his yellow. All right. All right, Steve is yellow. And now I can come in here and think, I don't quite like the yellow. Let's make him pink. All right. So now Steve is going to be pink. But I don't want to go in there and have to do all of this work all again. Well, you don't. Because I can make this as big as I want. It's only going to go within the confines that I had already put into it. Because we did a clipping mask. That's what a clipping mask does. We can control V again. And now he's yellow again. All right. So now how would we delete this mustache? We don't like the mustache anymore. We want to get rid of the mustache. Well, we would go to our mustache layer and we'd simply click the trash can right down here in our layers mask. Hit delete layer, and now Steve doesn't have a mustache anymore. Steve shaved today, okay? He decided he didn't want a mustache. But oh no, he decided actually, I like my facial hair. Control V, alright? Control V, guys. Alright, say we want to, instead of writing his name, Steve, we want to type his name. T. T on your keyboard brings up your typing. And sometimes it's slow because Photoshop. But look at how big this confine is and how small Steve is compared to the rest. So what we would do in this case is we would increase our size of our font, and then we would increase the size of our box. Or decrease the size of our box, sorry. So now my box is smaller, so that means I can make it bigger or smaller. So now we have Steve with his name on top. Say I don't like this font. How would I change this font? Well, that is very simple. You click on your text layer, and like I said, it likes to be slow for whatever reason. I've noticed this in Photoshop for all computers, is not just mine. The text feature is always slow, okay? So, now we're gonna make it fancy, alright? Steve likes his name in cursive. But now he likes his name in a Gothic font. He's feeling Gothic today, alright? Somehow that says it's Gothic, I don't know. So now we have Steve's name in a Gothic font. But let's say Steve doesn't want to be named Steve anymore. And Steve decided he wants to get a gender transition, and now Steve is now Samantha. But look at what happened. Samantha's too long. What happened? That's fine. What we do is get our confine box out. Get you some more food. I'm gonna get you some more food. And I'll come down. And bam. Samantha is now a longer name. I don't know if I spelled that name wrong. I'm gonna be honest. There we go. Okay. Alright. Steve is now a girl. Samantha, she likes longer names. Okay? I don't know. So I just wanted to show you what would happen in a smaller confined box. The longer your wording is, the more it squishes together, as you just saw. And so you have to make sure that your confine that you're typing in is long enough. Alright, so we learned how to do a clipping mask. We learned how to do a text box. We learned how to do brushes, how to open up our app, and we learned some of the files and that sort of thing. Next, we're going to learn how to save our document. Let's say we're satisfied with what we got. We have Samantha. We like where she's at. And we want to save our document in case Photoshop decides that it wants to crash, which it likes to do every once in a while, even though I pay $29.99 a month. But, it's fine. So we'll hit Control S. And that's going to bring up our prompt to save our document. I'm going to name this Steve, obviously, and we will not save it because you would hit save, but I don't want to save this because it's just an example for me. So that's how you would save your documents. It is very important that you hit Control S throughout the creation process because the more that you draw, the more that Photoshop has to run. And the longer it runs, the higher of a chance it's going to crash on you. And this is coming from someone who's speaking from experience. I have gone through very grueling, long hours of Photoshop work, only for Photoshop to crash, me not save anything because I'm an ADHDer and autistic, and forget to save my shit. And guess what happened? Poof! Into the cloud it went. No idea. You could swim all day, and you're not finding it, okay? It's not coming back. She's gone. She's a ghost. Samantha no longer exists, okay? You have to save your work. It's very important, okay? You can also do it manually by coming up here. We can hit save, save as. Okay, save as would prompt you to this, to where you could name your file instead of just having it automatically come up as untitled 1. And this is a recovered document because Photoshop crashed on me, which is a great time for it to crash because it reminded me to save this. Okay, so that is saving. It is very simple and it's crucial to making sure all the work you do is for nothing. Is not for nothing, I mean. All right, and so I think that's a good place to stop for lesson 1. Thank you, students, for listening. And I really hope that this is helpful. I will be creating more tutorials on Photoshop and more tutorials in general. But this is just the very, very to the bone basics. Okay. In the next lesson, we'll go over selections. We'll go over photo manipulation. We'll go over colors. And we'll go over the character box. The character window. That's the actual term. The character window. We'll also go over gradients, and then that will be about it for lesson 2. Then when we get into lesson 3, it'll be more grueling, okay? I'm gonna start testing you on stuff. Get your notes out because it's important. There's gonna be a test on video 3, so you better be prepared, guys. You better be prepared. Anyway, I'm going to stop it right here. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is Just Designed. I hope that this tutorial served you well.